But the coup de grace, before I go ahead and start talking to you guys on the food, is what brother George Will had to say last night. And I think it's quite interesting because I'm starting to hear a whole lot of more centrist Republicans say this sort of thing. And, you know, George Will is not a centrist Republican. George Will is a Republican to the right, very much conservative, very much to the right. But here's how this interview went between him and Lawrence O'Donnell. Check this out.
George Will has gone all the way. 4 years ago, the Pulitzer Prize-winning conservative columnist publicly left the Republican Party when Donald Trump won the Republican presidential nomination. George Will has given us some of the most beautiful anti-Trump prose of the last 4 years. Those years have now turned him completely anti-Republican Party after George Will suffered a series of disappointments watching Republicans in the House and Senate bend to Donald Trump's will. In a recent column, George Will wrote, "The nation's floundering government is now administered by a gangster regime." And yesterday, George Will surprised Susan Page in a discussion for the Aspen Institute when she asked him who he plans to vote for in November.
Who do you plan to vote for in November?
Biden.
Biden.
Oh, yes.
Have you voted for a Democrat before?
Never.
Joining us now is George F. Will, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and an MSNBC political analyst. And George, on this being your first 24 hours of publicly declaring you're willing to vote for a Democrat, I thought you might need kind of a friendly embrace from a place where that's welcome news. Tell us how you've gotten to this point and why your vote for Biden is important to you.
Well, the most important thing is to clear the ground so we can start over with American normal politics. On the 3rd of June, 2016, I stopped being a Republican. I did not stop being a conservative. I'm still proud of having voted for Goldwater in 64 and Reagan in 80 and 84. It's just that it seems to me it's time to get back to something like normal political argument. The day after Mr. Biden wins, what I am confident is going to be a decisive victory, I will be in the corner saying, oh gosh, we've got to stop some of these Biden policies. That's the job of a normal, loyal opposition. But what's happened is Donald Trump has cured me of the vice of presidential fastidiousness. I used to say, well, I can't vote for this guy because he's wrong on the capital gains tax. Can't vote for him because he's wrong on the top marginal tax rate. I don't care right now. Let's just get back, as I say, to something like normal politics. And if your party, Lawrence, had in the 1980s nominated Pat Moynihan, our friend, if in the 1970s they'd nominated Scoop Jackson, I would have a record of having voted for a Democrat before.
Oh, well, that's fascinating, you know, because I saw in the discussion with Susan, you mentioned Pat Moynihan and made the point that everyone knows, of course, everyone in Washington knows that you have Democratic friends, you've had liberal friends. Pat Moynihan, the New York liberal, was your best friend. And it made me wonder, if you had been registered to vote in New York, would you have voted for your friend Daniel Patrick Moynihan for Senate?
Yes. Even though in 1976, when he first ran, he was running against another friend of mine, the incumbent senator, Jim Buckley, Bill Buckley's brother. They don't, as you know better, they don't come along like that very often. When they come along, grab the brass ring.
So as you see this election, you're saying, you said to Susan yesterday, you believe that by 11 p.m. on election night, there are going to be so many George Wills, so many former Republican voters moving over, voting for Joe Biden, that we will be calling this for Joe Biden at 11 p.m. on election night.
In the Eastern and Central time zones, absolutely. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In the Eastern time zone, Florida, the largest swing state, North Carolina, another swing state. I'm not even counting out Georgia at this point, or Texas for that matter. The polls, Lawrence, have been remarkably stable this year. I don't think in any poll since January, getting a horse race between Trump and Biden, has Trump won. And it keeps widening. Now, I understand the polls can tighten somewhat. But who in America, after 3.5 years of this, is undecided? let's have the election tomorrow and get on with things.
You mentioned to Susan yesterday that you don't like getting engaged in predictions like this, election night predictions like this. You called it risky but fun. How much fun is it now? Do you approach this with confidence? Because most Democrats I know are terribly worried that the magician Trump is going to pull some rabbit out of the hat and somehow pull off another electoral college win.
Well, I think a nervous Democrat is a good Democrat in 2020. Because the Democrats have shown that they can do really weird things like failing to campaign in Wisconsin in 2016. But I think even Democrats are educable and they've learned their lesson, and they will run a wiser campaign this year.
Now, I mean, he said something very important there. And when he goes ahead and he said, all we had to have done is to make sure and campaign in Wisconsin. He forgot to also say Michigan. We only lost Michigan by, 10, 20,000 votes or so, which would have, that campaigning would have gotten those 10, 20,000 votes. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.